What's up, everyone? Thank you again for joining me here. Today, we have a very, very interesting set of points to discuss. If you guys have any questions, of course, feel free to just keep dropping them in the comments and we'll take them one by one. But I think the most important topic, starting with the removal of Trump tariffs and how much it can really impact India positively or negatively. Well, I think a few hours back, there was a declaration that Donald Trump is going to increase tariffs from 10% globally to 15% globally. So that makes a massive difference because India was already at 18%, so 15% doesn't really make too much of a difference. But pardon me, I don't think that is the biggest point that I would want to discuss. The moment I read this news that the Supreme Court had told Donald Trump he could not use his executive powers to levy tariffs individually, right? So this is very important to know. The tariffs haven't been removed from Donald Trump's arsenal, right? What has changed is he cannot individually target countries anymore by using emergency powers. What that means is he can't blackmail India or Europe or any other union. But what he can do is he can still disrupt global trade by simply saying that I'm going to put in 20% tariffs here, or 30% tariffs here, or 40% on aluminum. So that is still there. And he showed that already. He used that this morning to put 15% global tariffs. So one part is that. But the second part is the problem that India is facing is not about exports. We know that our exports to the US were never very important. The problem India is facing is that twofold, right? First being that the crude oil imports that we were getting from Russia, they're being hit one way or another. We've already reduced them by a lot. So if I'm not wrong, from Russia we were getting crude oil at about $60 to $65. Even if I get the numbers non-exact, the ratios will remain similar. So we were sourcing crude oil from Russia at about sorry from Russia at about $60 to $65, which is about a or about a $20 discount. Let's just call it that, right? From Russia, we got crude oil at about a $20 discount. So that goes away, and the argument to be made is that we'll get it from Venezuela at a discount again. But Venezuelan oil will be at a max of a $10 to $15 discount, right? What that means is we're going to lose those $5 to $6 of margin that our OMCs were working with. Now, they did not reduce prices when oil prices fell, so they still have room, but the OMCs will lose out on their profitability. And that means about 30,000 crore in dividends to the government. So we lose that as well. But the second and more important point is what you see on your screen right now. The real wage growth in India has been negative for the past 5 years. And here we're talking about the consumers, the real consumers, right? It's great if a rural economy grows. That's necessary to bring the country together so that everyone grows. But corporate earnings or your nifty or company earnings are not driven by, sadly, not driven by rural consumption. They're driven by urban consumption, the higher tier consumption. And half of that or more of that comes indirectly or directly from IT services. And because IT services and wage growth has been below inflation, that means spending power hasn't really increased. So the first 2 or 3 years, and this talk by Saurav Mukherjee, I think that came out on the YouTube official YouTube channel of his wealth management company. Watch that; it's quite informative. Take it with a grain of salt because he does have very extreme opinions. I respect him a lot, but he has a few extreme opinions. But watch that; it's a good watch. He comes up with two very good points, right? 21, 22, 23. You can argue that we really did see wage growth. India saw a lot of income coming in, which is why consumption grew. So people were spending on travel, people were spending on luxury goods and all that. But over the last 2 years, most of the consumption has been driven by loans. It's either BNPL, which is buy now, pay later, or it's through direct personal loans that have been taken for vacations. I'm sure if you look around in your group, you'll find people who've done that. And even today, it's fairly easy to secure a loan. If you have a job, you'll easily get a loan that's 10x your annual salary. So not 10x, let's say, but about maybe what 2 to 3x your annual salary is fairly simple to get. And that's more than enough for a few vacations and maintaining your lifestyle, right? But if your wages are not keeping up, first, you can't spend anymore, which is the consumption slowdown we're seeing. Even after the GST cuts, the consumption didn't rise because of that. And the second part is now we can't pay back loans. So last Sunday, we spoke about Muthoot Finance, how I had been short on it. And I'm still saying that the reason you've seen such a sharp fall in Muthoot Finance, and you will, I think, most likely we will see in PSU banks as well, is because there is an underreporting of NPAs. There are only two possibilities, right? Either the private banks are increasing their provisions for no reason, or public sector banks and your small gold loan companies are not increasing their provisions to hide bad results. One of the two things has to happen. You just have to check a Bajaj Finance versus a Muthoot Finance annual report or latest results, and you'll see this disparity. So we know that consumption has fallen, right? It's a very obvious distinction to make. So whether Trump removes tariffs or not is not going to affect the Indian IT sector, which is the one that's suffering a lot, because that is driven by AI. The only way that sector revives is if AI is a failure. But if that happens, then the whole bubble bursts. That's an even steeper fall. And that's the vicious circle we're in. That is why when we look at this trade deal or the tariffs being removed, it's very easy to argue that this should help India a lot, but it's not really going to make too much of a difference. In fact, for textiles, it's bad because we had an advantage over Bangladesh or some of our competition that's now gone. Now the 2% or 3% margin I think that we had is erased. So that means those stocks on Monday, I think, won't do very well. One sector that might do well could be chemicals. Now, I'm not sure, specialty chemicals specifically, but I can't be sure about that because थोड़ा सा long term अगर हम देखेंगे तो chemicals में भी at least medium term में there's a weakness until the global economy stabilizes. Though still, I believe it's brilliant to go into. But yeah, that is my overall view on how these tariffs will impact, or this change in tariffs will impact India, even starting on Monday. If you have any questions about what I've said so far, just drop them here. Till then, I'll move on to what we were just discussing. So I already talked about this, right? The real wage growth being very negative. The same thing that Saurabh Mukherjee has said, the corporate ladders being gone. Now, yeah, this point we've already discussed. I'll wait for your comments there. What I did want to talk about was chemicals then, right? If we're looking at buying into any sector today, someone asked me this in a comment, if you were to buy something for 4 to 5 years, which sector would that be? For me, there's only one sector that stands out, that's chemicals. And even within that, I think the biggest promise comes from fluorine. Ashma, yeah, I think I've only become more certain about it. So when I first came up with this video and I said that in 2 months we should see a sharp fall, there was this lingering doubt, but no, I don't see an exit ramp because I think Iran and US in some form something has to happen because to move two aircraft carriers across the globe into proximity of Iran and then establish so many air defense systems and everything else, the sheer cost of that indicates that there is something happening there. And about this trade removal, right? I want you guys to think about something. Just go back to Donald Trump's first term. He appointed Supreme Court justices that nobody liked. People argued that this Supreme Court is the most conservative in recent history. They removed Roe v. Wade's authority, right? Women are not universally given the power to abort a baby in the US anymore. This was done by this Supreme Court. So if this Supreme Court has removed the tariffs, now this might sound a little controversial, but it's common sense here, right? This was done with Trump's nod, right? He's the one who's appointed them. This wasn't them going against Trump to uphold the democracy of the United States. Now, why would that happen? And here I start guessing because I don't know Mr. Trump directly, but I feel like there might be either an existing issue or something new coming up, something like Iran and US ka war, for which what Mr. Trump wants to do is clean the plate, so to speak, right? He wants to keep things as simplified on other fronts as possible so that the US can focus on this larger issue at hand. And that might be the reason why tariffs have been removed for once. But yeah, about is there more downside? I'm positioned for it. I'm positioned for a significant downside. Now, so about the EMS sector, look, it's always going to exist. It's going to do well because India has opened this gate of exports and that has to help us. But is it going to be, let's say, if I'm just looking at this, right, just opening this in the background, but is it going to be the multi-bagger now in the next 2 years that it was in the last, let's say, 4 years or so? So if you look at a Dixon Tech, a company that's brilliant, I would buy into it for the long term. I have no doubt about it. But is it immediately going to scale back to these heights? I don't think so. because ऐसे जो falls होते हैं ना, they don't really stop that fast. So for example, even if you look at just this period, right, 21 to 23, let's say, this is a good, what, 1.5 year period. For the comeback, for it to come back here, it took 2 years, right? About here, this started what, Jan 25. So expect this to happen by Jan 27. And remember, this was not as big an issue as we're facing right now. This fall in 21 was driven purely by rates being hiked. That's not a massive deal. Yes, that lowers liquidity. Yes, that creates issues, slows down the economy. But historically, Fed raising interest rates, for the first time at least, has never been a precursor to a massive drop or a sustained drop. The issue we're facing right now is much bigger. So I would argue it'll take more than 2 years, which means there's at least 12 months before we see a, what, 19,000, let's, pardon me, at least 6 months before we see like a 40% return in Dixon Tech. And this is just one example, right? You could look at many others. If you have a company in mind, then share, we'll talk about it. But no, EMS long term brilliant, but in the immediate term, I wouldn't buy into it just for now. Okay, Jyoti. So आप कोई क्वेश्चन है, आप पूछो. Bring it here. I'll answer in हिंदी. थोड़ी बहुत हिंदी आती है हमें. So not to worry. Go ahead, आप पूछिए. मैं अपनी तरफ से पूरी कोशिश करूँगा. EMS sector में, if I'm looking to buy a stock, right? Let me just see what we have here, so I don't miss out on something. So we know that Dixon Canes would be a pick. Maybe not at these prices because it's a little overvalued a bit. Even at this point, it's at what, 4,000 about, right? Yeah. For me, a good entry price is 3,000 about. पहले भी बोला है मैंने. So 3,000 about पे I'd want to buy into Canes, but not at these prices. EMS, Ion Exchange, those are companies I'll go into. They're not from the EMS sector, but yes, those are companies I would go into. There's another one that I really like that's from Auto Components, that's Sansera Engineering. If we're going into this, let's say, machineries or industrial middlemen stocks, right? Sansera Engineering is something I've been a fan of for a while. I've been talking about this stock since, I think, 2023. Where this is a stock that should be in everyone's portfolio. So yeah, this is another one. EMS Limited, अच्छी कंपनी है ज्योति, कंपनी अच्छी है EMS. मैं look, you have to know कि I'm also just another guy, तो आप मेरी एडवाइस को ब्लाइंडली मत ले लेना, खुद डिसीजन लेना. बट लॉन्ग टर्म ये कंपनी अच्छी है, इसका काम बहुत अच्छा है. यू हैव टू थिंक अबाउट डेटा सेंटर्स एज वेल, राइट? इनके लिए इट्स नॉट जस्ट कि EMS का काम आपको आयरन फोर्जेस में, स्टील मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में दिखेगा, वहाँ पे दिखता है. इट्स नॉट जस्ट अर्बन कंजम्पशन के लिए, वाटर प्यूरिफिकेशन एज सच फॉर एक कंज्यूमर. EMS का काम आपको बहुत ज़्यादा दिखना शुरू होगा जैसे जैसे डेटा सेंटर्स एक्सपैंड करते हैं इंडिया में, बिकॉज AI बहुत पानी मांगता है. टू मेंटेन अ डेटा सेंटर यू नीड टू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ वाटर, and water at a specific pH, that too. So that also benefits chemical stocks. Long term, I don't think कोई problem है. But हाँ, if you've taken it at a 750, 780, then at that point it was fairly expensive. Like I think आप अगर यहाँ खरीद रहे हो 30 के PE पे, civil काम की companies थोड़ी expensive होती है. Might have to wait, but it shouldn't be that big an issue. Umber Enterprises is a brilliant company, Ashima. I think I bought it and then I sold it. That was a massive mistake. I remember my broker telling me that, sir, ye wala mat becho, pade rehne do. I didn't listen to him. I had bought it somewhere here, right? I don't remember exactly, but somewhere in the 2000s. And I sold it at a spike. So I sold it at 20% upside or something, knowing full well that I should have kept it. But yes, it's a very, very good company. Especially, again, this might play a role in data centers as well, but even if it doesn't, just because of the industry it's in, air conditioners primarily, yeah, it's a very good company to be a part of. Sona BLW, I have questions about, because the EV revolution as a whole, right, Subrajit, EV revolution as a whole is hitting some bumps because we've moved into a phase where people are not really buying EV. So for example, Stellantis India, I think they took a write-off of 10 or 20 billion. I'm not sure about the number, but somewhere in that region. That's the point. They took a write-off saying that we'll not move into the electric vehicle segment. So that tells me that any stock that is very highly focused on electric vehicles might find it difficult immediately going ahead. Now, why that is, I'm not sure, because I'm looking at buying an EV. I know that your Mercedes, your Beamers, they're all coming up with, your Porsche, they're all coming up with brilliant electric cars. And these companies usually only ride the biggest themes. So ये लोग ना 2 साल के लिए plays नहीं बनाते. When they make a play, even Mini Cooper, right? It's said that it's done with the ICE engine. So I don't understand, to be honest, why that is happening right now. It might just be a plateau before the rise, but we are in a plateau. And Sona BLW का exposure इतना बड़ा है EV. It's basically known just for its EV business among retail investors at least. So there I have a few doubts. It's kind of like the solar sector, right? The future is very promising. There's no doubt about it. But in the immediate future, 6 months down the line, is it? I don't think it's a great investment right now. PGEL. Let me just see. I might confuse it for Electropass. Yeah. Okay. So I don't follow this company very closely, if I'm being very honest. Wait, what happened here? Just a second. I hope you guys can't see my password. Give me 1 second. I'll just see if I can understand it as much as like possible. So air conditioner is good, fair enough. And it's an OEM, right? So they'll be supplying to good enough brands. I'm sure about that. Yeah, so I mean, is this company going to lose you money long term? Most likely not at these prices. But is it a company that I would buy when there's 100 other opportunities out there? I'm not really sure. If there's a particular reason, Ashima, why you like PGL, Ashima, it was your question, right? Is there a specific reason why you like PG Electroplast over, let's say, Number Enterprises? Is there something there, or Dixon Tech? Yes, Chirag, let me just read this. I agree, Chirag. So I'm saying, I want to buy an EV now. I bought a car 3-4 years back and I spent a significant amount on it. I had some amazing EV cars that I could buy, but I didn't go for it because it was a very nascent technology and I felt like we're paying too much just because it's an electric car, even if you remove the whole subsidy for the road tax and whatnot. Now that change is happening, right? Like Abhi, I think Mercedes is coming up with a CLA electric that's at about 70-75 pre-EU trade deal. So post trade deal shayad wo aur bhi sasti ho, and that seems like a brilliant vehicle to get into because it's priced at the normal CLA. I'm giving you an example. We could look at Tata Punch, for example, right? It's a brilliant entry level car and it's priced beautifully. 10 lakh rupees mein if you're getting that, there's nothing wrong with that car. That's why I said I don't know why this is happening, but this is happening. Sometimes we can't understand why a certain consumer behavior is occurring until we go a little further down the book and then see how the chapters unfold. So yes, future EV most likely, unless hydrogen cars come in or something, which I don't know about. But right now, this glut exists. If you want me to show you, like, if I just Google, right, EV cars not selling, that's how easy it is to Google it, right? See, so we get that immediately, right? For 2026 also, the forecast seems to be that it's slowing down. I don't agree with the infrastructure either. I think in my society where I live in Bangalore, there's 2 EV charging stations in the society, and there's one right next door in the commercial side of the society that I can see. If I was looking at a drive from here to Coorg, and I think I could find 5 or 6 EV charging stations. So I don't think infrastructure is a problem. The range works if you're getting 500 let's say even 250 kilometers out of a car, right? That's me downplaying range. So those things are not a problem. Okay, Sinister. Do you think the current geopolitical tension Trump's administration decision will impact more Indian markets? So Sinister, the problem with India is domestic. This is something that I find a little irksome, that our fund managers, our market experts are not talking about how we are fundamentally weak right now. Like most of our consumption, as I talked about right at the beginning of the session, most of our consumption is directly or indirectly driven by our IT services, right? Most of it, because they don't just contribute to 9% of our GDP. There is this metric that every 1 rupee put into IT services comes back as 2.5 to 3 rupees. That is the productivity multiplier of IT, right? आप उसमें कम invest करते हो, आपको ज़्यादा मिलता है return. And because in that sector, we are seeing wages slow down, right? As again, Saurabh Mukherjee, brilliant session. One of his, of late, he's been giving some brilliant talks. So I've been listening to him more again. And he talked about how wages have not kept up with inflation in India's primary sector. right? We're known as a land where engineers do well, right? We have all the big ones in our country in terms of companies. So what we know is that the IT services is not doing well. That's why companies are not paying more. So till that issue is solved, urban consumption won't come back. Until urban consumption doesn't come back, we will face issues of our own. And for as far as Mr. Trump and his policies are concerned, I spoke to my father-in-law about this, I think a good 18 months or so back, right? Not 18. When was Mr. Trump's inauguration? January, right? Yeah, so about 10, 12 months back or so. And we had this discussion about why Mr. Trump is troubling everyone but calling India its friend. And I said they have a history of doing this. America cannot have India become very powerful. If you just think about this from a geopolitical standpoint, right? Forget about financial markets for a second and just put yourself in the shoes of the United States of America as the head of NATO and see that Russia, China, India, we're all in Asia, right? And none of us are part of NATO. In fact, we're the biggest challenges to NATO, even though India has been neutral. We've always sided with Russia when need be. Russia managed to do this Ukraine war because India bought Russia's oil. Otherwise, they would have been a massive problem. So we know that US can't let India become another China because then NATO can't keep up with this BRICS entity. And even in BRICS, nobody cares what Russia is doing, right? What matters is what, pardon me, nobody cares what Russia, Brazil is doing, right? What matters is Russia, India, and China. So they can't let us become big enough. So whether Mr. Trump creates his policies specifically to trouble India, we'll see as time goes. But he will try his best to cause India trouble until India openly aligns with the US. And I don't blame him, right? That's how geopolitics works. Aether Energy, I think so. It's owned by Hero, I think, Hero Motorcorp. So long term, it could be brilliant. I don't think we're going to have internal combustion engines in bikes 5 to 7 years down the line. I think वो sales खत्म ही हो जाने वाली है. That segment is going to end. It might take longer in cars, but in bikes, that's going to end faster. So there, it could be a very good bet. But I would play it indirectly through Hero, or I'd play it indirectly through TVS instead of going into an Ether Energy directly. The idea being that I get some level of safety there, right? A big enough company won't lose me money. So that's where I would be a little cautious. But then that's my take, right? If you're a high risk investor, you could look at it. Is it even? I don't think. Oh, it's so. I these kind of charts again. They kind of get me a little worried immediately post listing when a company goes up like this. Because and here's my opinion on IPOs, right? So I have a brother-in-law who's like a ultra high net worth individual, right? Like funds would come to him for IPOs to become an early investor. And like he's big and he loves IPOs. And I always tell him that what Warren Buffett said, for example, right? If an IPO is coming in, the promoter isn't going to be selling his stake at less than fair value. So at best, an IPO is going to be fairly valued. You're never going to get an undervalued IPO. I think the only exception I saw was Irida. I went into that IPO. I was lucky I got allotments as well. But I think there's no company that comes out with an IPO undervalued. And if after that a company shoots up like this, it's very troublesome. And that too, it's not profit making. It could be a brilliant play long term, don't get me wrong, but this is just my perspective on investment, that if I'm going into a listed company in as a delivery of stock, right, I want to go into it at a margin of safety. I don't want to go into it at peak. This is exactly what one of our friends today, I think, what was her name, Jyoti, right, that's what she faced, right? She went into a great company, EMS. It's a brilliant company, I still think so, but she went into it at near peaks. I would never do that. I'd always wait for a correction to go into a company. Right. Okay. Now, we also wanted to talk about the chemical sector. If you have questions, just keep dropping them, right? I'm keeping an eye on this. But if we're looking at the chemical sector as a whole, I want you to think about it as a pyramid, right? There are three levels to the chemical sector in India, and I'm simplifying it to a large extent. The lowest level and to the highest level, what we add is value. The lowest level is where the companies need to do the least, and the highest level is where the companies need to specialize, right? There's a lot of value added. Like the difference between someone who's selling you, pardon me, a big roll of cloth versus someone who is selling you a nicely knit, size perfect piece of a lehenga, for example, right? So that's the pyramid I'm talking about. Now, I'll just finish this pyramid and then get to the question, Chirag. At the bottom of the pyramid, you have your petrochemicals, right? You have your Reliances and HPCL and Gales of the world, right? They're also part of this sector. That is something that will work forever. But I would go into high dividend stocks because I see the crude oil sector going through an upheaval now. Just to work with, do you guys know what the law of averages is? Have you ever heard of the law of averages? You should really look it up. It's very simple to understand. It basically says that everything goes up and down in maximas and minimas, but around one central line. अगर आप कभी भी देखते हो ना that one stock or one industry has suddenly shot up like this, know that it has to come back to its mean. Because law of averages, another way of talking about is law of large numbers. It's never been beaten in history. And that's what's happened with your HPCLs of the world, right? Your OMCs of the world. This kind of growth has happened before. Even at this point, for example, right? Let's say 2007, 34 to 58. That's about just a doubling. If you look at 2013, 27, and this was what, 4 years about to 320. That's about a 10x return. Again, here, maybe 137 to 500. That's a 5x return. So these kind of things happen with this sector, and it comes back down to mean. That has to happen. That's why this sector is what I'm the most bearish on, coupled with your gold loan companies. Muthoot Finance, luckily, I went in right at the top, short right at the top, and I think there's significant more downside. Similarly, L&T Finance, I think I've lost track of the question. But that's the idea, right? I think you get the idea. Now, coming back to our chemical sector, right? So I wouldn't go into petrochemical stocks simply because they've given too large a bull run. I don't see them sustaining it for too long. बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया है. But then comes the second level, right? Where you have your specialty chemicals, right? Which are lower volume but higher margin. And here we can talk about companies like SRF, though it has already given a run up. We can talk about your Naveen fluorines, and I love fluorine stocks right now. I think this plays into every future proof sector. This plays into your data centers, this plays into your EVs, this plays into everything. Your battery energy storage system. So this can be brilliant. Another company is Archean Chemicals. This I liked for one very specific reason. Look at my videos from about 24 August about there, right? I really like this company. It has something to do with EVs. They have, I'm forgetting the exact term for it, Abhi, but there's a chemical they add to the battery itself that very few companies make. They make it, and Ether Industries makes it as well. They were just entering into it. This is another brilliant one. This I talked about here as well. That if you get Ether Industries at sub 800, it's a blind buy. If you're looking at a 10-year, 15-year horizon, do your own research though, right? Ether Industries, my favorite Sunster. This perfect question, right? Yeah, I think it is the chemical stock to buy. If I had to buy just one with a 10-year horizon, right? It might half in the next 2 years. I don't know. But if I'm looking at 10 years, if I'm thinking about my son, Neve, for example, he's what, 1 year right now. If I'm thinking about buying a company from the chemical sector that could pay for his college education, let's say, in case I fall dead tomorrow, I would buy Ether Industries from the chemical sector, right? Now, so going into chemicals, you have to know which part you go into, because the third then becomes your CDMO, right? Where you've gone into pure play pharmas, right? Like your Divi's lab, for example, even though it's a fairly they work with simpler compounds, so to speak. But here there's a company called Supriya Life Sciences that I like a lot. It's given a correction. I went into it fairly early. It was at 200 above that had gone into it. Now I've sold it for now because I'm waiting for the fall. As I said, I'm almost all cash right now. But I really like this company from the pharma space, from the CDMO space. Because Divi's may, what can you expect from here, right? It's become multi-bagger already. It's already at a 1,60,000 crore market cap. It's not going to give you a 10-bagger return. But a Supriya Life Sciences at a 5,000 crore market cap can give you that. So I would go into a company like this if you're going into the CDMO space. Yeah. Now, are there any companies that I would avoid? So I came up with a video yesterday, right? I would stay away from companies that have gone up simply for the name Nvidia. Like right now, even though I love NetWeb Technologies, I'm going to stay away from it for a while. This seems like distribution to me. This does not seem like accumulation. Because when a stock starts coming into the news so much, right, and people start talking about, oh, they invented this and oh, they invented that, that only happens when distribution's happening. And at a 116, 115 ka P, even though I don't think it's expensive, I don't think 20,000 crore is enough for this company. This company should be a 2 lakh crore market cap in 5 to 10 years. But at these prices, no, because I don't know why they're coming into the news so much. Yes, they invented something great, but no, it just seems suspicious. I could be wrong, but it just seems suspicious. What else would I stay away from? Let's say this. I talked about this one as well, right? They have some partnership with Nvidia that I don't know why they talk about this, but look at this chart. Yeah, law of averages, right? 153 to 1900. It's a 15x return in how long? 12, 18 months. It's always going to come back down to the average. What I would go into today, if I'm going long term, I'd go into something like NTPC. Even a PFC, REC works for me, but with a longer term horizon, I think they will average out again. Like they will fall a little bit more and all that, but this at least gives me some dividend to work with. Similarly, for IT, I think there's a company, Axelia. I talked about it last time as well. I'm just going to reiterate that. It's come at a very good price. I'm going to wait for like a 10% more of a fall. I think 850, though, it shouldn't break unless AI comes up with a tool that automates it all. But yeah, a high dividend company, this is one that one should accumulate, right? If we can take a little bit of a risk as well. Yeah. What else? What else do we talk about? Is there anything else that you guys want to ask? About US Iran, right? If US and Iran go to war, what do we do, right? How do we manage that? So I am short on OMCs already. That covers my short side, right? If they go to war, OMCs crash. Whatever America tries to do, Iran will also get a few blows, right? And the Hormuz Strait will get choked either, or you'll find Gulf nations taking it up against the US for the bullying. But in some way or another, the crude oil sector will suffer, which means OMC suffer. So that's one part. Then Adani ports might get a big hit. And I think Adani stocks are still a short simply because the US is not going to let go of the Adani issue. So yeah, for that US Iran war, that's how I would play it. In order to make sure that I don't get completely caught off on the wrong side, I'm thinking about buying into a few calls tomorrow, specifically into your let's say Adani ports maybe, or I haven't finalized that work, but I'd buy a couple of calls for maybe a March expiry just to cover myself. But yeah, if they go to war, then these stocks, HPCL will suffer the most, I think. BPCL, IOC will as well, your Indigos will. So yeah, there's plenty of short opportunities there. Just a second, Sinister. So much of PR on my Sinister. There's a quote by Warren Buffett, right? That I wholeheartedly agree with. To the point where I don't even talk to people about their opinions too much. I'll ask what you think. I'll tell you what I think, but I'm not going for a big discussion with people generally because Warren Buffett said, shut your doors, close your eyes, shut your doors, close your ears, cover your ears, and just keep working. You should not listen to anyone when it comes to the stock market. You should do your own research. It should always be that. Oh, oh, Supreet, that's a very good question. I've been thinking about it for so long now. Many people have asked me what sector can we go into or what asset can we go into for, let's say, a medium to long term investment today. And my answer is there's nothing. There's nothing. When assets, so the problem with equities, right? Everyone seems to think that it's only driven by earnings or it's only driven by macroeconomy. It's driven by liquidity. The kind of end of cycle that we're in right now usually drains liquidity out of the system. So all sectors suffer. A certain stock might not, a certain sector in time, pardon me, might do well. But right now, sorry, can I see a sector that might? If you ask me today, I can tell you ONGC, for example, right? The ones who are digging out your crude oil. Metals should also do well over 5 years. But the problem is, I don't know how much they'll suffer over the next 6 to 12 months. That we'll only know when we get to see the Black Swan event, which is the Three Sigma event that comes up once in a while, right? Once we know what that event is, then we can say, yes, this sector should be fine. But today, calling that sector out is foolhardy. So right now, the only asset for me is extreme short duration bonds. If you want to make like a 3%, 2% return over 3 months, That's the best that I would suggest. Even an FD, for example, right? But right now, I don't see anything to invest in. That's the dichotomy of investment, right? There are times when you will find 100 things to invest in and you won't have the money to, and then there are times like these where you have enough money to invest but you don't know where to put it. Thankfully, there are banks in India, like IndusInd, for example, that give you a 5% return on saving. So I have half my portfolio just kept in savings, just making like whatever 5% return I can make, waiting for the right time to deploy that cash. Currently, oil production companies like ONGC, Oil India, because US Iran ka issue is what we're talking about, maybe 2 weeks later, it'll be metals because data centers ka demand increases much more, or it might be that metals collapse. So, adept actors, that's a nice name. Uh, so, here's my problem with the banking sector. The results look good, but I've talked about this. If you look at State Bank of India, right, I don't think I'll be able to show you the NPAs here. I'm just going to see if I can. No, I can't, right? So let's say SBI provisioning this quarter. I'm trying to find it as fast as possible, but the point that I'm trying to make is right. So State Bank of India has reported a decline in its provisions, right? Now go check Axis Bank, ICICI Bank, Bajaj Finance, any of those big reputed names, they've increased their provisions massively. Kotak has, HDFC has, ICICI has. So then, how is SBI? And the same applies to your other PSUs, your PNBs of the world, your Muthoot Finances of the world. They're reducing their provisions. Whereas, if let's say I just look at credit card, right? Get credit card default rate India. I'm doing this Google. I'm googling this right in front of you, right? They've risen significantly. 15% just as of March 2025. It's gotten worse from there. This isn't giving you current data, it's only gotten worse from there. A 15% default rate. And this is 90-day overdue. This isn't someone who forgot to pay their bill for 7 days. This is someone who's getting calls every day and still not paying. That means they're destitute. They can't pay. I have missed my credit card payments once in a while. I've also gone through a period where I didn't have the money to pay my credit cards. And I know that missing a payment, you get a very polite call. So your payment is due. Can you please make it? Oh, I forgot. I'm going to make it. Done. This takes a week max. If you're 90-day, I've never been 90-day overdue, but I'm sure if you're 90-day overdue, you're getting 5 calls a day. The only way you don't pay is if you can't pay. That's 15%. How is it that SBI's provisioning hasn't increased? You're telling me that credit card defaults are rising, but personal loan defaults are not. How does that happen? It's usually an overlap, right? The people who are maxing on the credit cards are the people who've taken personal loans. There's a big overlap. So that is the reason why I would not go into SBI if you gave me at a 15% discount today. I know it sounds harsh, but look at this rise. Let me show you technically. This was the fundamental reason of why, right? Now, even if we look at why SBI is technically weak, just a second. And we'll just use the money control ka free tool here. All I'm going to look at is the RSI, right? You guys know what RSI is? Do you want me to explain it? The relative strength index. Think of it like this, right? It's just a way to gauge how overbought or oversold something is. If the RSI is extremely high, then it's massively overbought. If the RSI is extremely low, then it's massively oversold. I don't know why money control is taking this long to open. Okay, here we go. So let's say if I check the RSI, right? Now you can work it by period, but even in this period, you can see it's overbought, right? If I look at a 5-year period, the most overbought it's been. I'm guessing most of us who are here started our investing journey 2020 ke baad, right? I started in 20, I don't know, not even 2000s. I think I was a baby when my dad showed me all this. But properly 2020 ke baad se I've been a full-time investment guy, right? Uske pehle I was just investing. My point being, it's the most overbought we have ever seen it. And if you max it out, once again, the only time we've seen levels of 81.54 are here, right before the GFC, 2004. And here as well, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a big red circle here where it dropped about what? 40%. That's how overbought SBI is. We shouldn't fall for that. I follow this as a matter of principle, right? If a stock has risen so much that everyone's talking about how brilliant a company it is, it's time to exit the stock. Because there's this concept, it was written in a book by Howard Marks, I think. Might be confusing the name of the author. I think it was Howard Marks. He named this concept called reflexivity in the market. What reflexivity says is, If I enter the market just to buy a stock or with an opinion, I change how the market behaves because I place the order or because I am talking to someone about it a certain way. I'm impacting the stock market. Now, imagine how millions of people today are extremely bullish on SPI, and that's why the stock has risen. But then there comes a saturation, right? This is what everyone talks about, overbought. उसके पीछे क्या होता है? यही होता है ना? Psychologically, everyone who could turn bullish on SPI has turned bullish on SPI. Now, the only people who might buy, let's say, at 10% higher than this are going to be mutual funds who have to buy because it's a Nifty 50. We wouldn't buy it, right? None of us think it's fairly valued now. So, yeah, I think it's reached a zone where it should get a decent correction. Now, if you're talking about 10 years, is SBI company you should be in? It, of course, it is India's highest profit making company. No company in India makes more profit than SBI. So, yeah, no doubt. But for example, I am short on PNB already. I'm going to short SBI as well. I've just been waiting for the right trigger. The moment I see that trigger, I'm going to go short on SBI as well. Because why would I not short a PNB or an SBI, right? At these prices, at these overbought levels. Law of averages, again, just take that. Reflexivity, law of averages, two things that I would want you to take with you about from our session today. So, Sinister, the curious part about this is, I do think yes. The answer to your question is yes, but I don't think a black swan event will be how we think about it. I think that event has already passed. In the near future, we might look at one of the things that happened in the last year or so. It could be the tariffs, it could be the US Iran issue boiling. Any of those events we could look at and think, or the AI or Anthropic coming in, we could look at any of those events in the past and say that was the black swan. So let me give you an example. In 2008, 7, 8, right? The housing bubble issue came up in 2007 when the markets fell a lot. Let me just show you that. I'll show you through Nifty. We can look at it through Dow Jones, however you want. But the first collapse, right? That didn't really happen in 2000. That's confusing. Yeah, so this is where the first collapse started, right? 2007. This is where the markets for the first time fell when people got to know that something was up. This was the first fall. And then we got this massive rally where I'm guessing everyone's sold. I wasn't smart enough to remember exactly how things figured out here. And then in 2008, when the market started crashing, it was for a black swan that started here. People in mid 2008 were calling 2007 the time when the black swan event started. Similarly, what we might have seen as a fall in July 2025, which could be the tariffs, April, July 2025, or the Anthropic fall, which we saw here, any of these could be looked at as black swans later. But what will make the market crash over the next couple of months is what I have to say, a large part of it is gut feel. There's a lot of instinct here, but it's instinct coming out of a lot of analysis. So what my analysis says over the next couple of months, it should happen now, a month or a month and a half, it should happen. The trigger I don't think would be that big. It could be US Iran war, and then it's ginormous. But I don't think the trigger will be that big. When we look back at it, the gun is huge, right? The trigger is still going to be pretty tiny. Exactly, Sinister. Well spotted. So that's the thing about the stock market, right? There's so many layers in it that even if we know something is already broken, somewhere deep down we know it's broken, we won't believe it because the stock prices won't reflect it. And that's because the ones with the most amount of liquidity will dictate how the market moves. And we know there are 100 ways that the index can be managed, right? So it could be, that's such a nice call. It could be, I don't know if China is ready yet, even though I remember in 2023, when China and Taiwan was gaining some boil, I remember Reuters came up with a report on it. And they said that China will invade Taiwan in the future, literally said that, but not anytime soon. And in that report, they had mentioned that the earliest they think this could happen is 2026, because China will need time to prepare. And then I read it and thought 2026 is so far. We should see something happen before that. Anyway, I forgot there was something I wanted to talk to you guys about with the distribution. Yeah. So the index, right? So if you look at the Nifty 50 stocks, right? I just wanted to show you how index management has been working over the past few months, right? We know mid caps have crashed, collapsed. Most of the mid caps have. Some are still doing well, but most mid caps have collapsed. But Nifty hasn't fallen. So this is something that happened in your 94, 95 as well. We can't see it here. But in that period as well, first you saw your mid caps and small caps collapse, right? And the large caps manage. So, for example, if you look at large caps, you'll see a weird coincidence of cyclicality, right? When Reliance is falling, for example, we'll see HDFC or Airtel pick up or your SBI pick up. So banks will pick up when your Reliance and IT is falling. Then when IT will start picking up, your banks will start falling or your Larsen Toubro will start falling. Try to do this analysis. You will see how this is index management, right? And it does happen. Now, I'm not saying that there is malice behind it, but this is just how financial markets balance themselves out. So, is China and Taiwan going to happen? Well, I'm not so sure. Jyoti, you're right. DI का percentage FIS से ज़्यादा है, but DIs के साथ and I'm guessing you were the one who asked for Hindi, right? Yeah. So DIs का percentage ज़्यादा है, and that's a good thing because we've been हम absorb कर पाए ना इतना pressure जो FIS का आया. But उससे बड़ी issue क्या होती है ना, DIs eventually retail investors ही हैं, राइट? वो आपका और मेरा ही पैसा है, वो एक सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय का ही पैसा है, किसी का पेंशन फंड ही है जो हमने रीडायरेक्ट कर दिया, राइट? वो पहले हमारा LIC में चला जाता था, वो पहले हमारा फिक्स डिपॉजिट में चला जाता था, उसी को जो एजुकेटेड लोग हैं, थोड़े फाइनेंशियली अवेयर लोग हैं, वो उधर रीडायरेक्ट कर रहे हैं. नाउ अगर कोई सिस्टेमिक इशू नहीं आती तो हमारे DIs विल सर्वाइव इट, राइट? तो वो हमारे सिस्टम को बहुत कॉन्क्रीटली होल्ड कर लेंगे जैसे उन्होंने करके दिखाया है. बट अगर एक सिस्टेमिक इशू आता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल लेट्स से IT में एंट्री लेवल जॉब्स खत्म हो गई, राइट? मिड टू एंट्री लेवल जॉब्स खत्म हो गई. ऑल यू नीड इज 1% डू द जॉब ऑफ 10 प्रोग्रामर्स. अब जो वो 9 लोगों की जॉब गई है, वो भी तो SIPs कर रहे थे. नाउ दे हैव टू सस्टेन द लाइफ स्टाइल विदाउट अ जॉब. सो कैसे करेंगे वो? थोड़ी देर लोन से निकाल लेंगे, थोड़ी देर क्रेडिट कार्ड से निकाल लेंगे, फिर उनके NPS शुरू होंगे. ये सब दिख रहा है ना हमें होते हुए. बट देन दे विल हैव टू लिक्विडेट देयर म्यूचुअल फंड्स. FD तो नहीं तोड़ेंगे, सोना तो नहीं बेचेंगे वो तो म्यूचुअल फंड ही लिक्विडेट करेंगे ना. एंड व्हेन दैट स्टार्ट्स हैपनिंग, तब क्या करेंगे हम? बिकॉज हमारे DIs के पास अभी शायद 4.55% ही कैश है. एंड जब लिक्विडेशन होता है तो वो फिर ओवरनाइट होता है. देन तो इट्स लो सर्किट टू लो सर्किट ना. So DIs good, they've done brilliantly, and I hope we don't get into a systemic issue because I have a lot of friends who work in this industry, and I'd hate to see them go through something as bad as losing a job and then managing your finances. बट दैट इज वही रिस्क है ज्योति, जो मैं बस चाहता हूँ कि आप अवेयर रहो उसका, कि जब जॉब्स जाती है ना तो रिटेल बहुत जल्दी पुल आउट करता है और म्यूचुअल फंड से. और अगर वो चीज़ हुई तो फिर DIs हमारी वीकनेस बन जाते हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ स्ट्रेंथ. Any other questions? Anything else that I can help with? I think key takeaway that I would want you to know is tariffs are positive, yes, but India issues are much bigger than that. I don't think tariffs change anything. Plus, up to we've gone down to 15%, gone up to 15% tariffs anyway. So basically, nothing is changing. In fact, negative for textiles and everything, because more than that, Sinister, I have been short on the markets, net short on the markets since September 2024. उस वक्त मैं IT पे short गया था, which I covered somewhere in Marchish. That is, I think, my single. It was a bunch of trades, but I call that one trade because my opinion was short IT. That was my most profitable trade ever, I think. I can't give you an exact number, but I think I made like an 80% return on my portfolio in those 3 months. I've taken it many times, Sinister. So I am churning. I'm not. There are some stocks that I've been short on, and I'm holding because we're bad big. Because if you want to talk about my failures, one of the biggest has been BEL. I went short on it. It fell, but Operation Sindoor ke time I didn't cover. I wanted to. I didn't cover. That was a mistake I made. But I'm holding on to it because I don't see BEL trading at these valuations for too long, especially since India is making these things. So that's an example. But I'm churning it. Like Muthoot Finance, I had gone short. I'll give you an exact number here. I had gone short 5 lots in total. I have covered 3 lots. I'm still only short 2 lots. So I booked some part of that profit, and now I've churned that into going into Adani Ports. I'm now going short on Hindustan Petroleum, BPCL, IOC, L&T Finance, Bajaj Finance. So right now, my shorts are in OMCs, gold loan companies. Even gold loan companies have booked, but yeah, OMCs, let's say gold hata dete hain agar hum, and NBFCs, your Bajaj Finance and L&T Finance. So I can't just short one company and then wait for it to give me a multi-bagger return. ना ये market वैसा नहीं है. ये market आपको linear returns नहीं देगा. And जब short covering rallies are, when short covering rallies happen during these kind of markets, during a bear market, they drive you out. They bankrupt you. So you have to make sure that you're short companies that won't give you a very, very sharp upside alpha. You know what I mean by that? For example, अगर अभी if I'm short Nalco, I am short Nalco, but इसमें भी I've covered a couple of, इसमें I've covered one lot, I think. I'm 5 lots in this as well. I've only covered one lot because it came at a support. Though I'm very negative on it, so I maintained it. But if I go massively short on Nalco at 341, it can give me a 10% jump one day, right? It'll open gap up. And its lot is about 13 lakhs, I think. At peak, at least, it was about 13 lakhs. So 10% up is like 1.3 lakhs per folio. So over 5 lots, that's 6.5 lakh ka nuksan immediate subah dikhta hai. So that's a margin hit, no? That's 6.5 lakh direct hit on the margin. That happens with 3 or 4 stocks and you're gone. You have to cut your shorts. You'll have to book losses. So when I'm shorting, I want to make sure that I short companies that are close to their highs. अगर कोई कंपनी थोड़ी नीचे आ जाती है, then I want to book and spread it out to other companies. That's how my profit taking works. Like L&T Finance is right near its peak. I know it's not suddenly going to go to 400 here. 10% gap up मिलना बहुत rare होगा भी तो. Then you have your Bajaj Finance. They're increasing provisions, right? Why would they go 10% gap up? Right? So how am I taking profits? Lot by lot. Wherever I see it play out, take profits. जहाँ नहीं होता है, wait. That's just how we can make it work, no? I think I used the wrong. This is what I wanted to show you guys, right? Like I'd go short on a Bajaj Finance because it's risen fairly. I wouldn't want to go short on a Nalco because it's already fallen. Yahan se there might be a short covering rally. Oh yes, Sinister. So I've already, but cold wallet, right? I'm not going to invest and put it in Binance or wherever. I don't know what's going to get hacked, what's going to fall. So when I invest in crypto, it's buy, cold wallet, gone. Crypto, I don't trade at all. I don't understand it well enough. If I did, I would. It's got such a brilliant beta. If I understood the crypto universe, I would trade in it 100%. But yes, I've bought into Bitcoin. बहुत छोटा allocation है. I've bought Bitcoin. I've bought Chainlink. I'm forgetting the names. That's how unaware I am of the entire universe. But the general idea being, I've gone into 3 types of cryptocurrencies, right? And I'm not recommending this because this is the highest possible risk. कोई foundation actually नहीं है इसके पीछे कि उनको इतनी value क्यों मिलनी चाहिए. But I have gone into it because I don't want to be left behind. छोटा allocation है. Bitcoin is a store of value. And then we have your Chainlink for the real world applications, right? So now that we talk about properties coming on to blockchain, something like Chainlink should do really well. And then there's a couple more that I don't remember. One is by the founder of Telegram, I think. It's the Open World Network or something like that. I'm forgetting its name maybe. Sinister, I can't advise on this. Honestly, I don't understand what privacy coins are to that point. My only research in this has been on 2 things that I understand: real world tokenization, real world assets ka tokenization, and then store of value. So Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin to hey, that's just your core. And then you have your Chainlink, and then one more that I've forgotten about. 100% Supreet. I think a flexi cap fund is always good. So this is something that I'm actually going to give a TEDx talk next month, and I'm going to talk. I want to talk about this somehow, right? When you're investing for the long term, you shouldn't just buy into one fund and just leave it. This is my opinion, right? It takes effort, but you should buy into different kinds of funds at different times. At the start of a bull cycle, like at the end of 2020, you should buy into small cap funds, right? 2-3 years, maybe you'll get a 3-year run, usually in small caps. At that point, the moment your tax burden becomes lower, if it's an ELSS fund, at least us waqt hota tha, then you book out of it. And then you move into more defensive dividend or arbitrage funds or bonds, because then you'll enter a bear run. So even an 8% return there is actually an outperformance of 30%. Done. Yes, correct, Sinister. That's what I've gone into. Now I remember it. Very small allocation to that though. My maximum allocation is going to be, in terms of number of coins, I think it's Chainlink. Then there's Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. Anyway, my point, sticking with the mutual funds, is if you're just wise enough to spot the macro cycle, then you can time your investments, not perfectly, of course, nobody can do that, but well enough that you outperform the masses by a lot. Because ये जो इन्फ्लेशन साइकिल के बाद ये बेयर मार्केट आता है ना, डिसइन्फ्लेशन होता है इसमें. दैट मीन्स लेट्स से योर पोर्टफोलियो वाज 1 crore एट द एंड ऑफ 2021 जब साइकिल एंड हुआ था. Today that's only worth like 60 lakhs because of inflation, but 1 year later it will still be worth 60 lakhs. So अगर आप 8% रिटर्न बनाते हो तो उसकी वैल्यू 60 lakhs ही रही, whereas other people का 60 lakhs has become 40 because they've lost in the bear market. So वो 20 lakhs is actually a 33% का आउट परफॉर्मेंस प्लस जो 8% आपने बॉन्ड्स में कमाया. So you've outperformed by 40% there. That's something that if you're a long-term investor, you have to think about it like that. Just putting it into the market and letting it grow is not for people like you and me who are sitting on YouTube, figuring out what to buy, working hard to make their money grow, right? Which I call them invisible employees. That's the topic of my talk as well. These are your money's your invisible employee. You've got to keep an eye on it. So FlexiCap today might be good. I would stick to bonds so that I have a fixed return, and I'd go into a small cap, mid cap mutual fund maybe a year down the line, because then I see small caps, mid caps outperforming again. FlexiCap is always the safe bet as well, but I think 6 months down the line, till we see a capitulation, a real capitulation event, panic, blood on the streets, right? Yeah. Anything else? Wonderful then. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. It's always amazing. You guys asked some brilliant questions that now I have to also sit and think about, at least a few things that I hadn't really thought about before I talk. So thank you for raising those questions. And as always, it's a pleasure. Since I am 5% invested right now. So let's say if my total portfolio is $100, right? I have $2.50 invested. I have about 50 just sitting in bank accounts, and I have 47 that I'm using for shorts. And of that, maybe about 17 is just left for margins. So 30 का actual short build किया मैंने, 17 margin छोड़ रखा in case the market goes against me, and then 50 is pure cash. In case I'm completely wrong about shorts, I have something to make a bull market work for me. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you guys have a brilliant weekend and a wonderful market tomorrow. See you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Supreet. Thank you.